Thank you. 6:30 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Invite our city engineer up to the podium. We've got 4 things I believe we're going to cover at the 6:30 discussion here with Scott. First is, and they're kind of interrelated, one is the RFP for the Watermain consultant process, and then second is the actual finance agreement for that. Third thing is a traffic control order, which Scott will detail. And the fourth is a discussion around Alpine and Bristol and Panel. And if you just want to leave those there, yeah, perfect. Is it on?
You gotta hit the restart button.
Perfect.
It's the restart on, you just have to reboot.
Commissioner Groders, will you hand me one of those? I'll make sure Commissioner Gilbert gets one. I think that's the only person not here tonight. Thank you. Oh, it's not plugged in.
Plug it in, plug it in.
On the front of it.
Wow, this is like. Yeah, Frank's playing the IT.
This could have been one of those service hotlines you called. I know, I've checked everything.
Yeah.
And you turn the OFX switch to the OM position.
We're on.
Thank you to our Assistant City Manager for saving the day. We're good.
Okay, so as Gary mentioned, there's a few items in front of you. First off is the engineering services for the Watermain looping project, and that map I think should help to kind of get you acclimated to where these connections are throughout the city. There's 3 spots that the DEQ, which is now Eagle, had required that long pieces of water main be looped together for redundancy and for water quality reasons, and they gave the city of Grand Rapids 5 years to get that done, and we're in year 4 right now, so we're coming into year 5. So what we've done is put together a package where we could bid these projects all out together. They're very similar, all similar types of unit prices and costs, and we think we could save a little bit of money by putting them together. So you've got proposals from all 3 of our firms. We've got our staff group together and went through our typical rating where we looked at the experience, the project team, the project approach and schedule, and also to see if it had an appropriate project cost. And the committee has recommended that Prine and Newhoff be selected. Their number in that proposal is $239,000, and of that, $107,000 roughly is design engineering, and $132,000 is construction engineering. And that ratio is pretty standard for most of our projects. The committee recommended them, I think, in large part because of all the coordination that's going to have to happen with this project. We're working with, obviously, the city of Grand Rapids, but also with Plainfield Water because there's a tie-in on the north end of town, and also Kent County Road Commission because 4 Mile Road is in their jurisdiction. So there's a lot of partners, and as we looked at that, they seem to be the right firm for that project. So that is our recommendation to you.
All right, Commissioners, any questions? And before I forget, a thank you from the Alpine Township Supervisor for helping make that connection up there. I know that was something that's been asked about for what that we were working on, but they're really excited that we're finally closing that one up. So, Commissioners, questions? We're going to make this easy on them. All right.
Okay, the second part is the finance agreement that's underneath a separate memo, and whenever we do a system project, whether it be a water tower or booster pumps, or in some cases a long piece of water main to connect to dead ends, that's where we use system funds. And the system funds come from the city of Grand Rapids water system under Walker's name, and after a project is put into service, then it just increases our system debt load a little bit, and then they have to adjust their prices and the rates that are used for people in the water system, and that gets paid back slowly over time. So we don't do a lot of these, but for a project like this that's really a system benefit, there's not a neighborhood that's benefiting directly from this. It's the system as a whole, and it makes a whole lot of sense here. And I think there's $125,000 in the agreement that is just for design. We've got a little buffer in there. Grand Rapids has asked that we come back in about a year, maybe 10 months, with another agreement that would cover the construction and the construction engineering, and those would be 2024 funds for Grand Rapids. The one that you're looking at today is 2023 funds, which are available July 1st.
All right, Commissioners, any questions? Covering three very distinct parts of the city here. All right, seeing none, well, let's jump to the traffic control order, and I think the key thing setting you up for this is it's something that we've learned with the, I believe it was the West Leonard Court area. We had, for those that have been around a little while, we had, over the past few years, had some real challenges on a very tight street, getting snowplows down there and really need to get that snow off of the road. So what we have is there's a few streets that are listed on the traffic control order, and it's meant to be, I believe, 8 to 6 during the day only, to kind of tee you up, so it's not impacted at night.
I would defer to Gary on that one.
Okay. That is correct, okay. All right, so, try to tee you up
As
there.
you said, West Leonard Court was a test a couple years ago to see how the odd-even parking would work. Grand Rapids and several other communities do this all over. It's a little bit of a new challenge for us, so I think starting out with one street made a lot of sense. And the PD and DPW worked well together and got that done. So the natural progression was that this item came back to the traffic committee with a request to do this on a few more areas that have a lot of high rental, a lot of extra vehicles parked in the street, driveways full, things like that. And so this traffic control order contains a few more of those in the Kinview neighborhood especially. It doesn't cover all of the items that were requested. We did have a pretty good debate at the traffic committee about this. We didn't want to just go out and blanket large parts of the city with this. It was places that truly do have some restrictions and some concerns and that are safety related. So we were pretty frugal in putting this together. And Gary is obviously here to help out with it because it's in large part based on their ability to clean the snow in the winter.
Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right.
No, I'd like to say that West Leonard Court was a good test, and that's working well. And also, I mean, for fire and police to get down there, especially fire. So these are places where sometimes we can't even turn around in the cul-de-sac, and that's why it's marked no parking in the cul-de-sac. So I think it's a great idea.
And I like to, applaud the thought process here, of making it easy for the residents. Maybe people, even if they're working from working remote that day, pull the car up into the driveway, allow us to be able to get the street done to help them out. So,
Good for everybody.
yep. All right, anything else on the traffic control order, folks?
Is that only for snow removal, right?
Snow removal only, yep.
So it's during the summer, it's not
No, it's November through April, November 1, April 1, covers those side streets, and obviously it's I think we walk a fine line there of, we've been getting later winters, the start of it. So it's not like we're jumping all over it. We'll make sure to communicate that through social
Okay,
media
good.
proactively.
Yeah, and I think with enforcement too, PD has put out warnings, not like split red tickets trying to make a money grab.
Right, just move the cars.
Yep.
Help us help you.
right.
Yep. Fair enough. Yep, all right.
I think that's a great idea. Let's not do that.
Commissioner? All right, next is,
Just a
Alpine.
project funding discussion, I think.
Yep.
This is the last item for us. We're moving quickly here, but this one might take a little bit more discussion. We are looking at the funding for our 2023 grant projects, and we've got two of those. One is the Alpine resurfacing project from Ann to Hillside. So that's our section of Alpine that's 5 lanes wide and a very busy stretch of road. And then the other project, which we've discussed a whole lot, is the Bristol Panel Bridge. The progress on that one, I think we're all up to speed on. It's been pretty good. We haven't talked a whole lot about the Alpine project because it's generally considered to be a pretty easy project. So one of the things we do with a project like this, and with really any project at the beginning of the design period, is that we take a look at all the underground utilities. And we've got the sanitary, the water main, and the storm sewer that are the big three. And then we've also got some private ones like gas, electric, phone, and cable. And in this case, we saw some things that we didn't like in the storm sewer in Alpine. and got a little bit nervous, and so we invested a little bit of money to have a company come out and TV all those lines. And what we found there was even worse. And the pictures that you see are almost look like a colonoscopy or something. It's looking down the end of a pipe, a little bit messy. But typically when we do this, if you look down the pipe, it's like looking down the barrel of a gun. It's just straight as can be. All the joints are nice and neat, and you know you've got a lot of life left in the pipe. We were a little concerned when we get out to Alpine Avenue that there's a lot of pipes that, like the top picture there, there's pieces that are broken off, and then dirt and sediment and gravel kind of gets collected behind them, and then minerals get deposited on the top of it. Pretty soon it looks like it's something that's not of our world, but it's down there. The second picture, which is over to the right in the middle, that's a good illustration of what a bad joint would look like, where the pipe's starting to come apart. And you can see that as you look up the pipe to the joint that's kind of off in the upper right corner of the picture, they don't line up at all. They're off by a good 6 or 12 inches. And that's just unacceptable. There's no repair that we can do to patch that up. It's just not a good situation. And then down at the bottom, it's one that just shows another loose joint where I thought it was pretty good because it showed some corrosion and how that occurs. And over time, those turn into stalactites and stalagmites and get pretty messy. So what we've got is an estimate of about $200,000 to repair the storm sewer. And the good news is, if you look at the picture on the left, it's not like it's storm sewer all up and down Alpine Avenue, because that was my worst fear at the beginning. I thought, oh my God, we're gonna have to tear up, you know, half a mile. It's all isolated in one intersection for the most part, so that's a very good bit of news. But we've estimated it to be about $200,000, and you know, that's a little bit of a concern. We still think we could make the numbers work, and we're still ready to move forward, but we thought to hit the pause button, talk through this a little bit, and see if there's any other way to approach this. And maybe one more thought on that. When you've got the grant funds on a project like this with the resurfacing, it becomes very efficient for, in our area, the big 3 paving contractors to come in and bid it, because it's almost all paving, and they can do it efficiently and quickly, expeditiously. But when you mix in other large items, like we've done on the North Ridge and Fruit Ridge project, I think that's a good example. There we hired an electrical contractor who does signal work, and they're having a heck of a time with the pavement work. You know, they don't have the right resources, they don't have the control, they just can't put this together. We're trying to fight with them over getting some final paving done before the signal goes live, and it's just not working out too well. And that's kind of what happens with these projects when you get competing big construction items that would be different types of contractors. So what we've done is we've explored what the potential would be for redirecting the grant for the Alpine project, which is an STP grant, and redirecting that to the Bristol Panel project. And we talk about this quite a bit, and how difficult it is to transfer grants because they're directed at one type of use and one type of use only. The good news is that the STP is the most flexible of all the grant sources. And so we have more flexibility than we would have on most other potential projects. And so we've done a little bit of work, and we think that we could allocate the grant money from Alpine to our Bristol Panel job and provide us a much bigger grant to take that project on, to help get that done. And we think that there's an opportunity to save as much as $100,000 on the Alpine job if we bid it locally and in parts. So the first part would be to hire an excavator to come in and just do the pipe work and just bring it back up to the surface with some temporary pavement, and then get him out of there. And then come back and we have somebody do some concrete repair work, another small job that we could be bidding locally. And then finally we'd have a paving contractor bid pure pavement, and they would come out there and they'd probably knock this out in a weekend, where instead of over a month or two. So we think there's an opportunity here to do some value engineering and save some money, maybe create some efficiencies. But before we got too far on this, we wanted to kind of check with the City Commission and see what you were thinking about, or see what you would think about this. Because once we start down this road and we start to juggle these grant funds, it kind of pulls a lot of our partner communities in, and we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. So I think we need to know that if we try this, we still have to commit to doing the Alpine job, because that grant that was dedicated to that was dedicated by the region and all of our neighboring jurisdictions, because that project met the criteria And so we can't walk away from our need to take care of that, and I don't think we would here. But it's just it's kind of a commitment to keep in the back of your mind when you're considering the efficiencies and the cost savings that might come along with this. So we're just here to kind of gather your thoughts. Daryl, do you have any other thoughts about that you'd like to add?
No, the only thing would be the timing. I know, the Bristol panel obviously is our highest priority in years, and we're well away on starting the design on that. So I think as far as ranking, that's more the urgency right now. And I think if we do this project and split it into the pieces, there's a possibility we could do it over 2 budget years versus all 1 budget year. So it gives us a bigger chunk of money for Bristol panel, but yet allows us to do this and budget for it accordingly. They would be local funds, but those would otherwise be local funds that were spent at Bristol and panel. If we can save $100,000, I think it's worthwhile to explore. And as Scott said, we need to have your direction one way or another, because once we make that change at the Metro Council, we can't go back and say, oh, well, that's what we're going to do, you know, put it back to Alpine. So I think it's a good approach. It's creative. I think it'll help us out in the long run.
Commissioner Burks, now it's first ward. Both of them are.
A lot of info, Scott. I'm a little confused. What's the grant-funded Alpine job you're talking about? It's not this repair.
It's a
right? It's something else?
resurfacing. It's a resurfacing
Okay,
project.
so it's the 3 mile to and resurfacing? Is
Yes.
that what that is? Okay. Okay, I missed that in the
Sorry, I'm trying to
discussion.
compress all this in as much as I
Yeah.
can, and I tend to skip
yeah.
some facts.
I mean, the commissioner is going to care the most is the one who lives a block away from this repair site, and he's not here. But it sounds reasonable to me. I'd like to think through it a little bit. Maybe I can talk to you this week about it. Maybe we can talk tomorrow a little bit, just to make sure I understand. But it sounds conceptually like a good idea to me.
Yeah, we're being cautious, but
Yeah.
it seems like it's a chance to take lemons and make lemonade out of it. You know, we got some bad news, but we think we can turn that around and have a better end product in terms of how much money we have to expend for the same benefit.
What is the timing once we start this?
Which one?
Either. I mean, all right, so what is, how long would it be for the Alpine repair?
Well, we break that up into different phases.
Okay.
And as Daryl said, we might consider stretching that over different fiscal years too,
Okay.
because sometimes down Alpine Avenue for probably a good week or two to get all the storm sewer work done. I shouldn't say close down. We would have 1 lane in each direction while construction was occurring. It would be messy and tight, but it'd be at least a couple of weeks of construction to do that. When you get to the resurfacing part that would come later, that's probably going to be weekend work or night work, and you know,
Okay.
you could still
I
keep
heard you say
traffic active during that time.
Yeah. So is that, I mean, I get why we want to split it up into different years, but is it going to be a real pain for everybody that's trying to get through Alpine to have it, you know, have those shutdowns throughout those phases?
It is. It's going to be a pain either way, though.
I mean, it's going to be painful either way, either
Yeah.
fiscally or, okay. I just wanted to
And when we pitch
wrap that
those,
around my head.
when we get started, we remind everybody it's going to be horrible, and then it's a little less than horrible, and everybody seems to get through it, including us.
Oh, yes. I remember the Kinney project.
And the condition of that stretch is not, catastrophic right now.
It's not catastrophic. I think I'm more concerned about the storm sewer right now than the pavement, because those pictures are alarming to us.
I have a couple questions about those storm, just out of curiosity. Do you know how old they are? And then the other one is, on that misalignment, was that like initially like constructed that way and nobody noticed it, or
I don't know the age, but this road was built with a corduroy surface at one point, which is, it's a road surface that has a whole bunch of wood, like railroad ties almost, that kind of hold the material together so that you can build a road over the top of it. So it's old. It's been out there a very long time. We can't go back on a contractor that might have done this 60 or 70 years ago, or we can't get mad at anybody here that maybe didn't inspect it well enough. But I watched all of those tapes to the point that I was a little nauseous by the end. And it's up and down those pipes. It's not, we looked at, can we just go in and fix a couple here and there? We looked at, could we use some kind of innovative liner like a fiberglass liner it's called in situ form, that you can roll through it, and it's just not good enough. We would regret it in a couple years.
I think to that question, I think looking through some of the old historical pictures when Alpine was originally getting developed and resurfaced, you're probably in the 30s, maybe 40s at the latest, but it's definitely, it's older pipe. I mean, that road being built at that point in time.
It's not as old as our bridge, but
This is true.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
close.
I think it's a good idea, though, to split it up into those 3 phases, especially with the way that been seeing construction costs come in, especially with storm sewer and HMA prices too, which won't be decreasing anytime
No.
soon.
If this thing, explodes tomorrow, what could we do? We have to act quickly. We
In
have
terms
a
of the
plan.
storm sewer,
Yeah.
we've had a few test runs over the years, so it's not fun, I can tell you that. It's a whole bunch of us out there in the middle of the night or on a Sunday morning, trying to figure out detours, trying to buy emergency equipment or emergency supplies. We would get it done, we would figure something out, but it's, looking at that, it's not just one spot, it could happen all over the place. And if we get a really, really bad deluge, 6 inches of rain in 12 hours or something like that, we'd be really concerned about this spot.
So guidance from the commission at this point. Commissioner Burke, I think you had mentioned wanting to do some follow-up discussion.
That's on me. I'm okay with moving forward in this unless I, shoot a flare tomorrow.
Sure.
And
And
we
I'm
can
gonna-
catch up too. We can catch up too on this and some other things.
And I'll say we, but I'll take the lumps from Commissioner Gilbert not being here, that if he should feel differently, then I'll own that. But I've got a feeling, based on the facts as they're presented, this really should be a kind of a no-brainer. Split it up, so Commissioner DeShane?
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't think we need any real action. We just needed some input. And then Daryl and I will kind of work through our normal channels to see if we can work this out.
Well, and by the time you're working this out, Commissioner Gilbert's back, he'll give his insight feedback.
Yeah.
I just want him to make sure he has a voice with, but timing will be perfect, so.
I can send him these images too, get him up to speed.
Super, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is it for us. And Scott, if you want to enjoy a evening, or if you want to stay, it's up to you.
I'm going to stay and take some pictures for the
Oh, that's right, sorry, we already talked about that, thank you. All right, what time are we at? 6:55? I see Jared Yax coming in. I'm gonna ask Jared to come up in a sec, some quick background. When we were at a annual award ceremony, I believe it was, Chief, back about a year or so ago, much to my excitement and pleasure, I found out Mr. Yax is a fellow historical, could we say geek, as I am, so I got really excited because we ended up talking probably for a good half hour about historical stuff in Walker, and I did not realize his extensive background with Grand Rapids Public Museum and Tri-Cities. And what our challenge here is, Jared is actually a paid-on-call firefighter for us, so he's on staff, but he has museum and historical background, collections background that nobody in this city has. After talking with Commissioner Groders and our city manager, how do we find a way, because Jared lives just a little bit over the city border, technically in Grand Rapids, how do we find a way to leverage his assets and subject matter expertise? And we came up with the staff liaison. So Chief has very graciously allowed us on non-call nights, I believe, to be able to have Jared. So we asked Jared, Commissioner Groders asked Jared to come this evening and give a little background of his things. His appointment is under really not, I want to go through the formality, but it's not anything needed for approval, but I thought it was good for visibilities because we're kind of actually really excited about the expertise he's bringing on board. So Jared's going to share a little bit of background here in the next couple of minutes before we start the 7 o'clock meeting.
Again, my name is Jared Yax. I graduated from Grand Valley State University, where I studied history, archaeology, and the German language.
Hey Jared, would you mind hitting that button on that? Thank you, perfect.
All right. I've graduated from Grand Valley, where I studied history, archaeology, and the German language. I've been a paid-on-call firefighter for about 10 years now with the city of Walker. Been in the museum field for about 20 years. Worked for the Grand Rapids Public Museum. I've got experience in just about every department within a museum. I've put together large exhibits, handled artifacts from like the Titanic, Dead Sea Scrolls, King Tut's tomb, you know, a lot of great experiences working with artifacts from all over the world in that capacity. I was the collections manager for a while there in Grand Rapids. I was a caretaker of over 1 million objects. I taught some pretty cool classes there with summer camps, like the Life as a Night camp, and I was one of the architects for their largest fundraiser there at Grand Rapids, the Night at the Museum event when they were running that. I'm also the only active and certified heritage emergency first responder within Michigan. I'm trained through FEMA and the Smithsonian, similar to the Monuments Men from World War II, where if a disaster strikes, I can go into that disaster area and help save the history and the museums within that area. So I just recently received an invitation to apply for an international certification in heritage emergency response, where I would go to The Hague, Netherlands, to receive a week-long training there as well. So just wondering if you guys had any questions about my background or my expertise that I could answer. But it's otherwise, I'm willing to help out where I can.
Can you just say a little bit about your, the digitizing that you're doing now in your current position?
Yeah, I just recently switched the Tri-Cities Historical Museum, their collection, over to a program called Collective Access. We transferred all of their digital records into a system where the public could see every single artifact within the collection and be able to utilize that collection without having to come directly into the museum. So if you go to the collection's website there, you can look up by keyword whatever you'd be interested in. So if you're interested in railroads, you just type in the keyword railroads, and it uses a similar search system to the Google websites, where it will bring up every artifact associated with railroads then. You're able to take a look at the artifact. There's pictures, there's a description on it based on what the curators have written about it. So it's a really kind of interesting way to be able to share your collection without having to come into a museum or having access to a museum. It lets people all over the world see what the Tri-Cities Museum has within its historical collection, and be able to do some of that pre-research before, if they would like to come in, then they can then come in and do facilitated research with one of our curators then.
Commissioners?
Fascinating. I find that very fascinating.
I was blown away.
When I go back
Very
to that
excited, yeah.
first discussion, I did not know, and then shared something with Commissioner Groders. I said, you're not going to believe what we have on our staff here. And really, I want to give her credit for the initiative to find a way to leverage you. And while I use the term kind of historical geek, because it's just, we enjoy that for fun. It's a passion. Your background is just impeccable, and let's hope we have no natural disasters. We have to worry about our collections being restored, but it's nice to know that we have it. So we're excited to have you on, and we'll kind of close the loop on the all the what ifs and everything here pretty quick.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you again for coming in, Jared. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Looking
Thanks for being
forward
willing to serve.
Yep, looking forward to help however I can. So,
All right, awesome. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, we are 6:59 in about 35 seconds, so we'll wait just a second here. Yeah. All right, Verizon's telling me it's 7 o'clock, so I think we're good. All right, we will call our 7 o'clock City Commission meeting to order. And I believe I have the invocation, and I will lead us in Pledge of Allegiance this evening. If I could invite everybody, please bow your heads. We thank you for your presence here this evening as we assemble here. We ask with humility that you continue to guide us in representing our community. We give special thanks and ask your continued prayers and presence over those who serve us in military, public safety, and public works, who, by their sacrifices, ensure we are able to safely and securely enjoy the freedoms and quality of life that we do. All of these things we give thanks for and pray in your name. Amen. If I can invite the audience, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with All right, before we go to roll call, we have a special event this evening. Last Monday night, we met in open session in here and interviewed 3 outstanding candidates interested for the open city commissioner spot. This group up here, this governing board actually unanimously picked Jessica Babcock to serve as the remainder of the term for Commissioner Glanville to the next election in 2024. So that being said, is there further discussion on Jessica and her ability to serve? If there is none, I'll entertain a motion for approval, probably from the second ward commissioner that's up here, and then support from someone else. And at that point in time, we'll do a swearing-in ceremony, assuming we have approval.
I will happily make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner DeShane.
Support.
Okay, Commissioner Burke. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we're almost official. If I could invite Commissioner Point to come to the podium.
I, Jessica Babcock,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and to faithfully perform the duties
and to faithfully perform the duties
of the office of Second Ward City Commissioner
of the office of Second Ward City Commissioner
to the Township of Walker to the best of my ability.
to the Township of Walker to the best of my ability.
And would you like to do a ceremonial one with Matt and the kids of you raising your hand? Any
Sure.
photo op? Sure. We can kind of pretend for one there.
No.
That's awesome. All right. Madam Clerk, if you'd run through that one more time. Thank you.
I, Jessica Babcock,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and to faithfully perform the duties
and to faithfully perform the duties
of the office of Second Ward City Commissioner
of the office of Second Ward City Commissioner
of the Township of Walker to the best of my ability.
of the Township of Walker to the best of my ability.
All right. And it is my privilege to announce our newest Second Ward City Commissioner, Jessica Babcock. All right. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. We're all good? All right, kid, you can wave to Mom from back there. There we go. All right, awesome. All right. If I may ask our clerk to please call the roll now.
Mayor Carey,
Present?
Commissioner Burke,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present?
Commissioner Chase,
Present.
Commissioner Groders,
Present?
Commissioner Babcock.
Present.
And I'd like to entertain a motion to approval for Commissioner Gilbert, who's enjoying a long overdue honeymoon right now, internationally.
Motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Gilbert.
I'll support.
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we are good there. Let me quick make my notes. All right, support. All right, good. Next on the list is the approval of minutes from the May 23rd, 2022 City Commission meeting. Are there any questions or clarifications on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Good. Commissioner Chase, support from Commissioner Groders. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, minutes are passed. Next is public hearing for the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. We're going to do this just a little bit differently. So what I'm going to ask Dan to come up and do is have him do his presentation that he put together. And then secondly, when Dan is done with this presentation, just for full transparency, should we have anybody come in for the audience, I'll open the public hearing up then. I'll need a motion and support to open it and a motion and support to close it. So I want to follow the kind of the Robert's Rules of Orders here and making sure we're tight with this. So that being said, Dan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Tonight is our time to up our proposed budget for 2022-2023. You, in your packet, received a couple of larger documents. The 39-page report, which is basically the budget with all the numbers, GL detail in it. The other one is our CIP improvement plan, which is a 5-year look-out plan that we use. That CIP was put into the budget document that you had. Instead of going through the whole 39-page document, I thought we would go through a PowerPoint, which would try to highlight some of the major parts of it, and then if there's questions or items you'd like to discuss, we can certainly do that afterwards. So again, here's the budget. It was prepared using priorities that the commission has established over the years. We've had a lot of communication and dialogue with the department heads and city management, with the finance committee, and also with the commission. The finance committee actually had looked at the document in front of you and had signed off on that in May. Since that time, there's only been one small, one addition, which is basically some revenue we added for the Granville court, or not the court, for the IT service that we're going to be providing for Granville. That was not in that version that we approved or we looked at in May. So just an FYI on that. We had a lot of staff help with this, consultants that we worked with. I had mentioned the CIP as part of it. We also, different websites through the state of Michigan for certain items that we put into the budget. So a lot of different things coming into the budget. Overall, the general principles of the budget are to reflect the goals and priorities identified by the commission, and then also to continue to provide quality services and programs in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible, which I think we will all agree is why we're here. Overall, the revenues are conservative in nature, which is probably consistent for those that have been on the commission a while. You've heard us talk about that over the years, but we're typically try to be conservative in our nature on the revenue side, trying to understand what the trends are doing for different revenue sources, meaning how is it affecting income tax versus how is it affecting property tax or state revenue sharing or building trades type revenues. And then the expenditures, again, are looking back at the two items up above. One thing to just point out, which should make sense, I would think, for everyone, is that because of the last couple of years and all the challenges we've had with COVID and the pandemic and what have you, this year we're trying to add some more stuff back in that we've had to postpone over the last couple of years. So the expenses are a little bit higher than what they would be if you compare it to last year's budget. Looking again at the revenue side, our main sources of revenue are three-part. The property tax end of it. As part of the budget, we're also approving our millage rate, for operating purposes, for what we'll be charging the residents for Walker-specific operations. Our millage rate continues to stay at 1.336 mils, which is exceedingly low relative to most other municipalities. That has not changed since 2000 actually, and but we have a good growth of construction still, so that revenue continues to increase even with that static millage rate. So we're estimating about 1.65 million in property tax this year. For the income tax side, this one again, we're still trying to figure out the pandemic, what the effects are of it. Income tax it spreads out over a longer period of time. As people might have had losses, and I'm not going to try to get into that because that's Julie Block's area. But basically, for this budget year that we're proposing, we're looking at 11.5 million in revenue as a budget figure, which is the same dollar amount that we have in our current fiscal year. We amended that last month to the 11.5, and so we're going to hold that steady going forward and see how it plays out. And then we have state revenue sharing and Act 51 money, so that's money that comes from the state. The state revenue sharing, the second to the bottom one, $2.5 million, that goes into our general fund. That's basically sales tax related. And then the Act 51 is actually money from gas tax, and that's our portion from the state that helps fund our major and local street funds. The American Rescue Plan Act, we've all talked about ARPA, we've heard about it. It's actually in a separate fund in the budget itself. It's not part of the general fund. That was recommended by the state to account for it in that fashion, and so we did that. Walker is scheduled to receive about $2.6 million in ARPA funds. We received 1.3 in the past September, and then it had said we would get our following 1.3 basically a year later. We just got an email literally on Friday that said that the state has that money and they're looking to release it within the next 30 days, so that we'll be getting that quicker. So we had authorized in the current fiscal year to use $588,000 for the physical security system. That's in process right now. So we have other monies available to be used for ARPA related projects. We just at some point need to sit down and figure out what we would like to do. We have some priorities and some ideas, but we need to officially make some action on that. So right now, the budget that's presented to you does not include any actual expenditure for any ARPA fund because we haven't really agreed to one yet. So, so again, then just the one thing to keep in mind with this money is that we have to have the money obligated by December of 2024, and we have to have the cash spent by December of 2026. So we have some time yet, but time is still ticking along. So, okay, shifting to the expenditure side. This year we put a 3% cost of living adjustment in for all staff throughout. We've had a lot of investment in IT or hardware and software, security stuff too. The third bullet point down, updated rental rates charged to departments for vehicles and equipment usage. We have a fund, which is our Fund 206, which is considered our capital equipment fund. That fund owns and operates all of the trucks, fire trucks, police cars, this type of thing. Basically, that fund is then supported by rental rates that we charge to the various departments who utilize that equipment. So fire, police, DPW, storm sewer, just like like Scott was talking about, they pay some money towards it too. Spent some time, I was able to get some more information from DPW this year that was able to help us get a little better handle on what those rental rates should be and get that fund back in a better position. So that's basically what I'm alluding to there. The next part is some fire-related equipment, turnout gear. The next one down is continued commitment to making additional pension liability payments. We've been doing that over the last few years, several years actually. It's usually 100 to 150,000. This year we're going to try to bump it up to 200. We also have a lot of maintenance-related things. Just the stuff following below there are all maintenance-related things that have made it into the budget. On the road side, we have our local and major street funds again. We had budgeted about 1.1 million in road overlays for some improvement on different roads. The major streets are going to get 500,000, the local streets 600 according to the budget. The last 2 years it's been 400,000 each. So again, we're trying to catch up with some deferred maintenance and keep the roads in good shape that way. We also then have multiple projects in here for more construction. So you have the Kinney and Remembrance intersection. We have money in the major street budget for that, but that is a project that has been identified as potentially being eligible for an ARPA use. And if that were to be the case, then the 470 would come out of the major street budget and be put into the ARPA for the major street fund if we go to that route. Scott was talking about the Alpine Avenue resurfacing. Sounds like we might have to relook at some of these numbers as things change here. Same with the Bristol panel. As it says, the final cost is to be determined as of yet. So, and then a couple other projects that we have in there, mainly for design. On the vehicles and equipment side for police and fire, there's a laundry list of things there. I won't go through all of them, but a lot of DPW stuff, again, that has been put off because of the pandemic and not really knowing how our revenues were going to come in. We continue to try to replace 3 police cruisers on an annual basis. This has been an interesting year because we couldn't get them. All of a sudden now we can get all sorts of them. So we've actually, the ones that are budgeted here, we are actually almost have received, or we've received 2 out of 3 already. So, so we've already kind of paid for next year, so we won't be putting more on next year. But the reason we could do that is because the single axle dump truck that we had for this year, we haven't even ordered yet because they're so far out. So. One thing I wanted to point out towards the bottom there, the second to the last bullet point, it says there's a final payment on the platform truck. So that was the aerial ladder platform truck that we purchased a couple years ago. That's our last payment on it. It will be paid off in September of this year. And then we also increased the fuel expense to obviously reflect what's going on that everyone is seeing. So, okay. We also have set-asides on the expense side. So what we're doing here is trying to take some money out of general fund and put them into different set-asides for future projects, or build up some reserves for future things. So we have $100,000 going to a facility set-aside fund, so we'd be at about $510,000 at this time next year. OPEB set-aside, so other post-employment benefits or retiree healthcare type things, that would put us at about 457. We also have 100,000 that's going to the capital equipment fund to start a new set aside for a future fire truck, and then 50,000 to the WIFIC capital set aside. We've been doing that for a number of years, and we'll be at about 264 next year. First 2 we have not really funded in the last couple of years, so this is trying to add them back in. Same with the fire truck, because we had purchased a new fire truck, we weren't doing a set aside also. So we're going to start that up again. And then that capital set aside for WIFIC is more for if the roof gives out, or the major types of expenses. That was the fund that we actually bought the Zamboni out of, so that worked out really well. And then finally, the general fund does transfer money to other various funds to help them with covering operations and projects. The one to point out here, I guess, is WIFIC, the third one down. That one, although it is a big number, it is actually lower than what we had in the last fiscal year by 100,000. So that's encouraging. And then the other ones, the 2 road ones, are mainly because of the overlays that we're trying to do. So, okay, on a bond and debt level, we are incurring no new bond debt in the proposed budget. The general fund and the major street fund and the local street fund are all bond debt free, which we've had last year. We continue to be that way. The next one talks about the fire truck, which I had just mentioned. And then the DDA has a bond payment for the fire station 2, which is in Standale. We've got one more payment that's due for about $185,000, and then that one will be done. And that has no impact on the general fund whatsoever. It's all from captured taxes for the DDA. And then the Riverbend Watermain has one more bond payment as well. That was a water main project we put in around 2008. And as I said, we have one more payment left. There is a little bit that the general fund has to forward to that fund to help cover that payment, but we still have installments of people paying their assessment. So eventually the general fund will get paid back. It's just a timing matter. So now, if we look more specifically at the general fund, that's the main fund of the city. Its purpose is to account for activities that are not required to be recorded in a different fund. So for example, the major street and local street, we get special types of money that has to be spent specifically for that. Those have to be spent or have to be accounted for separately. The general fund's kind of the catch-all of everything else at that point. But when we talk about the general fund, it has the three main revenue sources, and you can see obviously income tax is our big one, 63% at this point. State revenue sharing is at 14 and property tax at 9, so that's 86% of our revenue is in those three buckets right there. So then I thought we would look at a couple of slides here to maybe graphically illustrate some of this. So, so that is our proposed revenue for general fund of about 18.3 million. And again, you can see income tax is quite the large one there, and state revenue sharing and the others. So the next slide would then be the general fund portion, and that is $20.8 million of expenditures for general fund. And you'll see in the middle, those are the two big, the police and fire. Then towards the right-hand side, you'll see pension and OPEB. We still have a big required contribution we need to make annually for about 2 more years, and then that will readjust. So that graph would go down at that point. And then the last one is those transfers out that I mentioned to the major street and local street and WIFIC. So those are that. So then if you take the two slides that we just looked at, you'll see the orange portion is our revenue, the blue portion is our expense, so the green portion is the shortage, or what we would say is the use of fund balance. And just as a reminder, fund balance is basically the accumulation of all of the revenues less expenses over time. So this goes back to when the city started, so a long way. So we're proposing to use some fund balance, which we have done for the last several years on our budgeting. So this slide I wanted to point out again is more to talk about the fund balance, the accumulated revenues less accumulated expenses. The very top line shows an audited number from our last audit, which says unassigned fund balance in our general fund was $8 million. So what that is saying is that accumulated revenue less expenses, and that's allowed to be used for any purpose within the city, was $8 million. The next line down then is the subtraction of our use of fund balance in the current fiscal year, which includes the amendments which you approved a month ago. So we get to June 30th, 2022, we're at 6.6 million. We do the same thing with the budget that we're presenting, that's at 2.5, and we get down to a fund balance of 4.1 at this time next year per the budget. Then the line below it for the 20 million, that was the budgeted amount for expenditures for the 22-23 budget. If you divide the 4.1 by the 20.8, you get 19.97 on the bottom percent. And the reason I point that out is because we have a fund balance policy for the city that says the general fund balance can't go below 15%. So this is showing that we have met that criteria. This just, again, is another graph of fund balance, a history of it over the last couple of years. The bottom line, the more blue-black line, is this unassigned fund balance, which equates to the slide we just looked at. So again, you can see that we're way above the 15%. The line above it is actually the total fund balance of the general fund, and I'll things, but there's been some accounting rule changes, and that's why there's a big jump between 20 and 21. There's more stuff that's included in the general fund now that used to be accounted for in a different way. So if you have more questions on that, I'm happy to answer. But then finally, this graph is trying to just show again our revenue sources. The blue on the bottom is the property tax, green is state shared revenue, and then the orange is the income tax. So it just kind of gives you graphically, you can see again how much we're dependent on the income tax here. The city has multiple funds. I mentioned a few of them, and I won't go through this whole list, but basically we have a fund for every one of these. I think I counted 20 on here. So each one of them has to have a budget, or shouldn't, let me take that back. Each one we do a budget for. Per the state, we don't have to approve a budget for each one of them. It just depends on what type of fund they are, but we do a budget internally for each one of them. So that's all of our funds. So let's get to this slide here, which gets to the resolution, which is before you tonight. So overall, the city has 27 different funds, but the resolution you're looking at tonight only contains the funds that are required for formal approval per state regulation. So when you factor that in, our total resolution's at 27.8 million, and then that splits it out between all the different funds that are required to have that approval. So that was the slides, and I thank everyone for all their work. There's a lot of work that goes onto these things. A lot of people get involved. So thank you all for your time. I'm open to any questions or clarifications, anything you'd like to discuss. Yes.
Dan, thank you very much. I looked through this today. You answered most of my questions. Most of my
Good.
question marks in here are not question marks anymore. Just a few things.
Yeah.
The DDA fund that we're paying bonds off this year, and that's the end of it, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then the DDA fund is basically funded by property taxes within the DDA, is that right? Or?
That is correct, yeah. So basically what happens is when the DDA was established many years ago, every property was had a value to it. So, say I owned a property within the DDA and it had a $100,000 value on it when we established that. The next year, my value went up to $105,000. So the tax that's associated with that $5,000 increase would then be captured by the DDA and kept for DDA purposes. And so every year that increases a little bit. So that's kind of the premise behind that. So the DDA actually I think is through 2029 right now. So it will continue to go on even though the bond will be paid off here, that we have it legally going for a few more years.
The organizational
Correct,
component is
yes.
through 29.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
We're allowed, as Commissioner Burke, as a city, we're allowed to have one
Right.
one town development district.
Right,
And
okay.
that's the one.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't picked up on any of that last year. The ice and fit, walk-door ice and fitness, I was feeling a lot better about it when I read this today, but then you made me feel worse about it
Oh, no.
again with the $350,000 transfer, which I didn't see in the book for the fund. Is it in there?
So it is in there. It would show up in two different spots, and that might be part of the confusion because there's a $300,000 of it goes to operating, and then $50,000 of it goes to this capital set aside. And I think, let me pull that out here. So that it's in there. It's just probably not presented as clearly as
It's
it
just
should
in
be.
two different spots,
Yeah.
operating and capital. I mean, it's the two different buckets.
Yeah, it'd be on page 37 of that, or the last page of the WIFIC budget. There's two orange cells highlighted. And they're towards the bottom there. Hopefully you'd see the,
No, I see it now. I
Yeah,
looked at the
okay,
bottom
yeah.
line, I was all happy. I didn't
Yeah, I
realize
know.
there was a big, I didn't realize there was a big giant ad
that's all right.
prior to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's a good
Okay.
philosophical, on that topic is, pre-pandemic, we were, Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, we were somewhere 100 and,
Yeah.
some thousand
Or a couple
away.
hundred, yeah.
From that deficit piece, so and then the pandemic hit and really punched us in the mouth hard, so, I'm optimistic that 350 is conservative.
Yeah.
And because the fitness numbers are in a very positive direction.
They are. It's actually, the fitness center right now is looking a lot better than we had thought. So it's gonna be real interesting once we get through the audit where it finally falls, because if it comes in better, that 300, we might not have to go quite that high. For next year, we might be able to go to 250 or 200 or something like that, so just depending, so.
Okay, yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
but I
It's
thought it
still
was better
there.
than.
Yeah, it's
it
still there,
was.
I know.
Thanks.
Anything else, Commissioner Burke? Okay. Commissioner Shane? Making sense yet? Because there's a rent test later on it, so. No, a couple of the highlights, a big thing for me is from a exposure standpoint is income tax is more at a 63% number this year. That's down 4%, give or take, right in there, so that's a good thing. I also too, you know, one of the things that gives me a little, not a little, but a lot of comfort and confidence is when we're able to start getting into the set-asides again. And it's something that's a very strong best practice to have. If we want to take a family vacation, we put money away and just don't run it up on a credit card. So it's really important to leave the house financially in good shape. That being said, there's a lot of good things in there, and the one thing I'm really, really proud of is the additional $200,000 into the pension liability. That has increased exponentially, and for me is a source of pride of how well you all have done managing us through that. So knowing that it's a priority of us to get it down. So, you know, all in all, good budget, as Dan had said, if I can quote, the very conservative, and probably going to be some twist to this. We've got some options with the ARPA money. You know, we've talked at previous commission meetings about potentially the Leonard and Kinney, or I'm sorry, Remembrance and Kinney intersection and better signalization there, which anybody driving through there could see. It's not a high accident intersection, but it's one within our purview that we can influence, I think, in a positive way. Money could be used for that. So not only you budget on a conservative amount, but I think the other thing too is the statement you had under the property tax that continues to increase as new construction remains strong in the city. So when we talk about you know, the aggressiveness right now in our industrial corridor, building that up, this is where this comes to roost. So that being said, we'll be taking up a resolution to adopt this in just a second. So we good on your end?
I am, thank you.
And I'm going to officially open up the public hearing, if I have a motion to do so, on the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Commissioner Chase, Commissioner Groders. There's a motion on the table by Commissioner Chase, support by Commissioner Groders, to open up the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Anyone wishing to speak on said budget for 2022-2023 is welcome to come up to the podium now. Chiefs, I know you're just itching. No, don't want to touch those. All right. All right. May I have a motion to close the public hearing, seeing we have no public in the audience here?
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner DeShane, Commissioner Burke. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed. All right, next on the list is public comment on any agenda items. Chief, I think you had an update or two. Or, you want to come up now? Yep.
I do want to make one right away. Jared didn't say one of his biggest accomplishments in recent history is he was involved in the Edenville flood over Midland. He helped orchestrate the recovery of all those artifacts out of the, is it Sanford? All those areas. So he took that training he got from FEMA, from the fire department, and then what he got from the Smithsonian and put it together and actually did a huge save while he was over there. So it was
Very cool.
He was impressive. And we're excited when he got the email today about going to The Hague. It's like, wow, he's got a lot of skills, and we're happy to share them with the historical committee.
Thank you.
Down in Ward 3, you've probably seen it still there. There's still a burnt building hanging out. It's probably going to be there for a while. We did talk to Kevin Pike out of Niederveld. They completed their initial testing. They're waiting for lab approval right now. Then it's going to go into litigation. It could be anywhere from 6 months, maybe a year. But once that gets finalized, then they can finally take that building down or start restoring that building. But that's going to be a while. So unfortunately, it's just one of those things, being the cause and origin, they're still have to make that determination of what it is. They're believing it's electrical, but they've got to go through all the hoops and the legal steps to make that acknowledged. Great time at the summer concert series. If you haven't noticed, they packed that park full of people. It was quite fun. Working with Nicole DiNonato, we're starting a recruitment event. It started at the park. We saw the ladder truck was there. We have actual signs up too to try to spur some recruitment to be a paid on call. I think as the fire inside. So we have little QR codes they can scan and get that input. Just keep playing things out. Technology. On the 25th of June, City of Walker's been invited with the City of Grand Rapids and other donut communities doing a high-rise training exercise. Chief Host has been very integrated in organizing that with the City of Grand Rapids. It's testing their capabilities, because if they do have a major incident, they're going to heavily rely on the outlying first response areas like us, Plainfield, Kentwood, Wyoming coming in and helping support them and doing a joint exercise. And this is going to be a big undertaking. We've got several invitations out there for others to come and join and watch. We've extended the boundaries for paid on call to respond to the north and south stations. We've actually got 2 right away. One's a certified firefighter who lives just outside that 3-mile district, and they've hit the orientation process. They're going to start the physical agility testing on the 29th of this month. So we're excited to see them and hopefully get some influx along with this recruiting. And later this week, we're going to be publishing a guide for you commissioners of the fire department, our terminology, what the calls mean, why we respond to them. We're trying to get it a little more clearly on what's a paid-on-call firefighter to a part-time firefighter to a full-time firefighter, and what the different calls mean. So when you get that monthly report that you'll get this Wednesday, it'll differentiate what's the turnout time compared to an overall response time. So we're excited to get that out to you and hopefully provide some clarity on how we respond to calls. And speaking of the budget, that aerial has been a very beneficial machine, and we want to thank you for approving that back in 2020, and it's been very effective at several different fires, and we really enjoy such a fine piece of the investment that you put forth into our department to make sure we can do our job. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. Chief Mankel, anything? Okay. All right. Next on the list is the consent agenda. We have 4 items. First is the expenditures in the amount of $795,427.92. The second is the Walker Watermain looping project, that award that our city engineer Scott Connors covered in the 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. Third is the traffic control order 270 for consideration for proposed parking restrictions. That was also covered at the 6:30 meeting. And number 4 is appointment of Jared Yax as staff liaison to the historical committee, which we've also since covered. I'll entertain a motion for approval if there's no other discussion on said items.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner DeShane,
I'll support.
Commissioner Groders, in support. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. Next on the list, Resolution 22-632. This is our annual certification of delinquent special assessments to the 2022 summer property tax roll. Daryl, Dan, any background on Daryl? Or Dan?
Go ahead, Dan, White, since you're here.
And I think that's the sheet that we have in front of us.
Yeah.
That single sheet, yep.
Yeah, thanks. So this is an exercise we need to do each year. Basically, these are special assessments for particular properties that were not paid in a timely fashion. And our recourse is to put them on the property tax roll to collect them in that manner. So there's several parcels, but only 2 different special assessment districts on there. One is the Riverbend Watermain project. So the ones that you're seeing in front of you were the installments that were due June of 2021. So they're quite a bit old, but they go on the roll. Just that's how it works out. We can only put them on the summer tax roll, and they have to be 60 days past due. So with the June 1 deadline and the property tax go out July 1, that's only 30 days. So then we're forced to having to go an extra year. The other one is the DDA streetscape special assessment, and there's a handful of properties on there as well. So we're basically just getting approval so we can put them on the tax roll and collect them that way.
All right, thank you, Dan. Commissioners, any questions on our annual exercise here? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support on Resolution 22-632.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Chase, do you have support? Support. Commissioner Burke. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution 22-632 is passed. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. And then next is Resolution 22-633, the adoption of the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the 27 different funds, as Dan had covered just a little while ago, and our total 2022-2023 budget expenditures per the resolution are $27,815,795. Is there any other questions or discussion on the upcoming year budget? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support, please.
Motion to approve the budget?
Support.
Commissioner Burke, Commissioner DeShane, and support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we are passed with the budget. Thank you. No other public comment? None? You just stay seated, you're good. All right. Commissioner, city manager comments. I will actually start, we'll end up down here a second. City managers to the left.
All right. First of all, while Dan's still here, I just wanted to thank Dan for all his help in the commission and the finance committee and staff, department heads, everybody. I think the budget process went very smooth this year. I think we had some good, robust discussion, and we're able to tick off a lot of projects that were delayed and in a conservative fashion, and still put that, some of the set-asides away. And I think we'll hopefully, I'm optimistic we're conservative on the income tax. We're still trying to feel that out in the income tax department on the work from home impact. So that may take another year or two before it kind of levels off and we get a true picture, but I'm very comfortable with what we proposed in the budget. So thanks for the adoption of that, and appreciate the COLA adjustment for staff. I know that is much appreciated by all the staff as well. So thank you for that. Otherwise, working on a couple of DDA items. One is the property acquisition for the parking lot project that the Rapid is doing. So trying to work out the final details on that, because that will eventually come before you for a formal motion. And I'm hoping to get that on the 27th agenda if all pieces fall into place. We have a DDA meeting next week where we'll talk about that, and trying to get all the legal paperwork together to make that happen in a expedited fashion, because they would like to get started on that project probably in July and get it, most of it constructed yet this year. So kind of fast tracking that acquisition. And then also the streetscape assessment district in the DDA, Dan had mentioned that, and the delinquent tax rolls, that is set to expire in another year. So we want to renew that so we have a source to maintain the landscaping and flowers and snow plowing that we do in the DDA. So doing a lot of work in the DDA items. And then I guess the other big thing is the DDA next week. They're supposed to have the final master plan from Spalding to Decker presented on that with the street lights. So that will generate some additional work on updating the overall DDA plan. So again, spending some time there. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Assistant City Manager. Commissioner Burke.
Chief Pelton, thanks a lot for sending us that. I'm looking forward to that report. We've talked a lot about, there's a little bit of confusion, at least there was in my small brain, between paid on call, actually on duty, and then paid on call coming in the middle of the night. And so clarifying that would be helpful. And then the response times too. There has been some discussion about our response times and some of the ways we're deficient. So I want to start understanding that better. So I look forward to that. The only thing city-wise I've done since our last meeting was I did attend the planning committee meeting on June 1st regarding the River Ridge development proposal with about 70 people with a lot of comments. And Mayor, I know you watched you couldn't be there, but you watched the next day, you watched the whole event. And there's still just a lot of bubble going on. And so I just wanted to propose a thought that I've come to with some discussions with the assistant city manager and the city engineer. I've only been doing this 12 months. I've learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot. But when it comes to developments and zoning and the master plan, I thought I had learned that in the Lincoln Hills example, that if the zoning is agricultural, but the master plan says we're going to go to more higher density or more of an RPUD situation, well, we should look at the master plan and we should try to achieve our vision. So we rezoned there, understandably, because that was what our master plan said. Well, River Ridge is the opposite problem, where the master plan says that we're going to keep it open space, preserve, and the zoning is high density, and now I'm told the zoning rules. And I understand why now, took me a little bit to get that. But I've read the master plan since, probably my third time, at least for Alpine Bristol, in quite a bit more detail. And I think, we're making tremendous progress in some areas of the city. The industrial sector build up, the way we're bringing business here, all in accordance with the plan. But in other areas, I don't really think we're hitting the mark yet. The master plan calls for restoring open spaces, it calls for sustainability, creative redevelopment, mixed-use urban design, new parks, but it seems to me that English Hills being an exception, where I think the city did great work balancing out that development and making some greenery there to make it, I think, what's going to be a nice project. But in general, it seems like we're just kind of getting the same old proposals and working after the same old things. So I would like to propose or ask folks to consider maybe a city commission, planning committee, joint session, maybe a retreat. We've talked a little bit about this. Just to look at what is our vision for the city. I see unique creative development designs in places around the country. I'd like to start focusing ourselves collectively towards those goals. And I think maybe if we just step back and talk about what's our vision, how do we push our agenda and start getting more mixed use, more creative design, et cetera, et cetera. And I welcome anybody else's thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShane?
Well, how do you follow that? No, I agree with you, Tom, or Commissioner Burke. I think that's good. We need to continue to challenge ourselves to sometimes get comfortable with being uncomfortable and come up with the right solution for that. Great job, Dan. Thank you so much. I really think that the PowerPoint is really a nice way for all of us to kind of really absorb the detail. I know in the finance committee meetings, we sit there and we go page by page, and sometimes you do a summary sheet, which is very, very helpful, but it's a great way to do a good overview of all the data and the finances in a way that's very understandable for anybody that's viewing this commission meeting. I also wanted to welcome our second ward commissioner. Welcome. I'm excited to have you, as all of us are. And other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Chase?
I'm all set.
Commissioner Grovers?
Just a few activities last week. We attended the Speed Rack ribbon cutting, which was amazing. I was not expecting it to be quite as large as it was, but great facility. So glad that they chose Walker to come and invest $65 billion or whatever it is. A lot of money. So in a great facility. That evening then was our first summer concert, which I thought was amazing. A huge turnout, great evening, perfect weather, perfect everything. So looking forward to the next one in July. On Friday morning, I went to Denny Van Portfleet's retirement coffee. By the time I got there, he'd already gone back to work. So,
That's Denny.
but
Yeah.
so I guess it just speaks highly to the work ethic of our DPW and hopefully all the staff. So that is all.
Thank you. Commissioner Babcock?
I can say something. So we didn't meet as the Community Engagement Committee last Monday, but we did have a few people volunteer at the Library Carnival. And it was a great turnout. They were worried about rain, but it held off for the entire event. It was great to see people come back together, lots of smiling faces. And I heard they had between 1,000, 1,200 people. So really good turnout, had a great time. And then second, just wanted to say thank you to all of you for selecting me as the second ward commissioner. I look forward to working with all of you and serving the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
So just a couple things. Next week, the clerk's office will have limited hours. Jessica gets to go to Traverse City for a clerking conference. And then I will be out Monday and Tuesday as well. Because of that, we are not going to be processing passports next week, just an FYI. And then with all of that, we are fully in election mode now, receiving lots of applications. Ballots will go out next week. And with that, we need election workers. So if you know anybody, please send them our way.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Clerk? All right, a couple of quick things. We will not have a work session on June 20th or July 19th. Please enjoy your time off. So the third Monday of June and July, as we customarily do, light agendas, budget's been passed. So we will not have work session meetings the next June 20th and July 19th. Next Tuesday in the commission chambers here at 6 o'clock, there will be a social media post in the morning. I didn't want to do it before and have to explain beforehand. The county is starting to promote it already, is they're going to use this room for community forum for ARPA funds from the county's perspective, not from the cities, from the county. So we're going to be a good host, good partner with the county. Commissioner Steck will be here leading that. Welcome to attend, come up here, please give your feedback. But it'll start right at 6 o'clock in this room. Could be as short as a half hour, could be as long as an hour. Wouldn't expect it to be a long one. June 27th, we will have at our work session, Senior Neighbors. Bob Barnes will be in here, the president and CEO of Senior Neighbors will be in here to do a little work session. Both city managers and myself had a informal coffee with Bob last Friday. Was it last Friday? I think last Friday or 2 weeks. So we just had an informal catch up. Where are we at? Staying on track with the 3 Mile Station, and I'm excited about where we're at. There is, for the record, if you do come to the county forum, county community forum on June 21st, next Tuesday, please let Commissioner Steck know you'd love to see money from ARPA used towards the Senior Neighbors to help fund that piece. There has been an official request put in from Senior Neighbors to the county. Our support, I think, is going to weigh in pretty heavily there. And also that night, Commissioner Gilbert will be back from traveling around the world. Let's plan on getting a group picture that evening. I believe everybody will be here that night.
Which night?
June 27th, or are you gone?
We'll be in the UP.
We will kick, oh, that's right, you're on your motor, right? We will actually kick it to July, so I'll give everybody a heads up for the July meeting. We'll get one of those nights with our newest commissioner in there. And then, yes, the speed rack ribbon cutting was something else until you're inside that 300,000 plus square foot building and realize the magnitude of what's there. And just to have people come, you know, the CEO of the Michigan Manufacturing Association, so many people from MEDC, and I mean, wow, what a privilege it is to have that in our city. Summer concert, for any of us that have been around for a while could remember, that is our largest crowd we've ever had. I'd be remiss if I did acknowledge, thank you to our fire. Love seeing the recruiting piece out there. That's awesome. The food trucks had lines. We had some discussion afterwards on some takeaways and things to work with that. But probably the thing that impressed me the most, and I am going to go on public record of saying this, is within our group here, is we had our police officers there. That obviously was a major announcement that afternoon, and the professionalism we went about doing our job, handing out stickers to kids, and it was business as usual, speaks volumes. So thank you to the department. We did what we do, so that was a good thing. So that being said, I think that was all I had on my list. Anything else, good order I missed? And I actually would encourage our newest commissioner to make the motion to adjourn as a motion for the evening.
I'll make a motion.
Do you have support? Support. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we stand adjourned. Thank you.